Hello everyone. Today I would like to talk to you about research philosophy and how we get from our everyday lives to our lives as researchers. Now, Professor Johan Mouton explains this according to what he calls the three worlds framework, where world one is the world of our everyday lives, world two is the world of scientific knowledge and research, and world three is the world of meta-research. It goes something like this. In our everyday lives, we find ourselves in various physical and social settings like church, work, family, school, so on. We use knowledge from everyday life, practical know-how, experience, insight, wisdom, and we use these knowledges to solve problems, to give advice to people, to negotiate something, and to cope with life, in short. But we are also creatures with very big brains, and we can also solve very complex problems. And we do this by being in world two, the world of scientific knowledge and research, where we take problems or phenomena from world one, the world of everyday life, and we do scientific research about these problems, and we get knowledge and we create new knowledge based on more rigorous and more systematic processes, so that the knowledge we create and the knowledge we find is more reliable, less problematic, less fallible, and more valid, and so on. And that is world two, the world of scientific research. Now, because we are intent to be systematic and rigorous, reflection in this world is specifically important because we want to scrutinize and quality check ourselves at every step to ensure that we have the best possible knowledge product. And in comes the world of meta-science, world three. This is the world where we reflect on scientific knowledge and reflect on scientific research. Now, the word meta means beyond, so it's beyond science. We reflect deeply, and this is where the different scientific fields and disciplines are born. That's how we think of how things belong to different disciplines. It's where field-specific philosophies develop, and also research philosophy that's specifically interesting to us in this tutorial. Now, while Professor Johan Mouton's conception of the three worlds is very useful to us to understand the differences, my thinking is more that we can't really separate these worlds so easily. We also reflect in our everyday lives. We also use our reflection, we criticize ourselves, we do introspection, and we learn from our experiences and so on. And in the same way, we do in research. So I'm thinking that we can use how we go about our real lives to understand the research process and the reflection on research a bit better from one another. So I'm thinking more in a metaphor of a tree. Something like this. Our tree of life, we can say that the root system is maybe our religious beliefs, our cultural ideas, maybe our political beliefs, and also our ethics, our moral cores are also all at the bottom. They are, if we were using a building metaphor, this would be the foundation. Then our knowledge would be the trunk, like our everyday knowledges, insight, wisdom, practical know-how, experience, knowledge, so on. And the branches are what we do with that knowledge, like we use practical know-how maybe to fix a car. We use insight maybe to give advice to someone. We use our knowledge from experience maybe to improve something. And the leaves are the techniques, the finer step-by-step, how to fix a car, step-by-step, maybe how to go about negotiating peace between different people, maybe how the process of advice giving can work. So those are the techniques and the tools. Now, when we get to ourselves as academics or scientists, this tree gets another dimension, but it's still the same kind of tree. It's still the same kind of processes. It's just that it's more formal and in a more systematic way and more abstract language we use. We are still humans, so if we are humans doing research, we still go through our belief systems in a very similar way as that when we do in our everyday lives. Now, philosophy is the study of the fundamentals of life. And I just quickly want to go through the 5 main areas of philosophy because they make up the basics of research philosophy too. Firstly, we get metaphysics. Now that is the study of being, and it mainly consists of two areas. Cosmology, which is beliefs about the creation of the universe, the origin of the world, and ontology, which is more beliefs about the reality and being of objects or phenomenon in our case. Then we get axiology, which is the study of values and morals. We get epistemology, which is the study of knowledge. We get logics, which is the study of argumentation and logical thinking. And then we get the study of aesthetics, which is the study of beauty and of art and taste. Now, when we're in the area of scientific research, we are already busy in the epistemological area of philosophy, because scientific research is about scientific and rigorous and systematic ways of creating knowledge and getting to knowledge. So we are already, all of what we're doing is actually in the area of epistemology. And together with that comes a kind of a logic. I've been saying this repeatedly: systematic, structured, so on. So the logics of argumentation in the scientific world is also kind of set up for us in a specific way. So when we talk about research philosophy, we assume certain logics and we assume that we are already working in this world of epistemology. So we kind of customize the philosophy, from general philosophy to a research philosophy. And then the tree consists of mainly these areas. At the root system, we'll have ontology and we'll have axiology. And then the trunk would be epistemology, and the branches would be methodology, and the leaves would be research techniques and processes and so on. Now let's talk about this in a bit more detail. As the root of our tree, we have ontology. We focus on ontology and not necessarily metaphysics in general or cosmology, not because these things are not important. I'll talk about the interconnections between all the philosophical aspects a bit later. But in general, scientific research happens in a specific subject area, and we are busy with specific phenomena. And the root system of our tree is our beliefs about the nature of reality and existence or being of those phenomena. When it comes to social phenomena, we are talking about concepts, creations, systems, events, happenings, occurrences, experiences, and behaviors that we consider as part of human life. Things like communication, like relationships, like human behavior, like change, like management, like organizations, like networks. These are all examples of social phenomena. And our ontology is our beliefs about whether or not the phenomenon exists and what the nature of that phenomenon is. Whether there's one reality or truth about this phenomenon or multiple possible realities or truths. Whether the reality or realities of this phenomenon itself is stable over time or dynamic. Whether the phenomenon exists independent of human experience, or does it exist inside of the human mind and inside of our thoughts and perceptions and experiences of it. Whether some aspects of the phenomenon is hidden or suppressed or unknowable, or is it all in principle knowable. That is ontology. Also at the root system of our tree sits axiology. In a research context, axiology is our beliefs about values and ethics in research. And if we think in terms of social phenomena again, our axiological beliefs include things like whether or not moral values have a place in research, whether value-free knowledge or value-laden knowledge is preferred or accepted forms of knowledge, which topics or phenomena are worthy, intrinsically worthwhile our research, or worthwhile research topics or research phenomena. If and how the researcher's values influence the research approach and process. How the researcher, the act of research, and the research process influence those involved, and the ethics of such influence. Then are there specific values like religious or cultural, political values, for instance, that should be specifically prioritized and valued in our research? These are all axiological questions. Then epistemology. Now, as I said before, all of research lies within the area of epistemology because research is about knowledge. But for this very reason, there are many different ways of thinking about knowledge in the research context. So the trunk of our research tree is epistemology of research itself, our beliefs about knowledge. When it comes to social research, our epistemological beliefs include things like what kinds of knowledge are acceptable, reliable, trustworthy, and so on for studying certain phenomena. What can be known about a certain phenomena and what cannot be known? What are the limitations of knowledge, in other words? What can be considered an acceptable knowledge product in a research context? And what is the relationship between the people participating in the research and the knowledge? Then part of epistemology is our beliefs about how we could and should go about acquiring or creating knowledge. This is called methodology specifically, the study of methods. Now, methodology is the practical know-how of knowledge. Now we will talk a lot more about the details of methodology in future tutorials. But in social science research, our methodological beliefs come down to things like what's the general research approach, how should the research be designed, which specific methods and techniques and processes we use to collect and analyze data. Now, there are so many different ways of describing one's philosophical beliefs or assumptions for the purposes of research, but I want to talk about some of the concepts we often use as descriptors of research philosophy. Now, we can almost only scratch the surface here, as there are so many ways to talk about this. Now, if we look at some of the ways, some of the concepts and terminologies we use to describe our beliefs, our research beliefs. In the first place, we get the term objectivism, which is sometimes used interchangeably with the word realism. In terms of ontology, objectivism or realism is the belief that there is a real, objective, definitive world or reality of a phenomenon or a social reality, and it exists in itself, within itself, external to us and others, and independent of what we might think about it. In many ways, the terms are the same, but I would say that realism is more the ontological position, whereas objectivism would better describe the epistemological position of being objective. The knowledge is about objective facts, and that meaning and truth are independent of the human experience. Now, when we speak about this in terms of axiology, we believe that research should be value-free, also seen as a separation of facts and values and scientific and normative sides of life. Then we come to a concept almost in direct opposition to objectivism and realism, and those are concepts like subjectivism, relativism, or idealism even. Now, when talking about reality, these terms denote the belief that reality or existence of a phenomenon resides in the hearts and minds of people, and that there are many different realities rather than one single reality. A reality that is like absolute, like objectivism or realism would have it. but relative, so to speak, hence the word relativism, and that it consists of our ideas of it, hence idealism. In terms of knowledge, subjectivism means that knowledge is basically opinions that are mind-dependent and located within a specific context, like a social, cultural, historical context. When we look at this line of thinking and the axiology associated with it, we recognize knowledge and science and research as being bound to human values. So all knowledge is laden with the values of those who participate in the research process. Then we come to terms like universality, multiple realities and meanings, and another one, pluriversality. Now, universality refers to a single reality or a single meaning. And then there's the belief in multiple possible realities and multiple possible truths. And then pluriversality, which basically means that there are many possible ontologies or many different beliefs about truth and reality, and different epistemologies, so different beliefs about knowledge, or different axiologies, like different value systems that exist at the same time and are in connection with one another. Next is the term constructionism. Now, a constructionist ontology is the belief that reality is intersubjectively created through social interactions between people. So, in terms of knowledge or epistemology, we can say that knowledge is constructed knowledge. It's intersubjective, and knowledge is a transactional process because knowledge and meaning is made between people with different subjectivities as they interact with each other. In a way, constructionism is about reality or knowledge not being an issue of the individual, but a collective human thing. Where subjectivism may be understood as an individual subjectivism, constructivism is that collective, intersubjective way of seeing things. This brings me to a related concept, relationality. Relationality we often use in Afrocentric research contexts. And as an ontology and epistemology, relationality is the belief that social reality and knowledge is understood through the relations between people and non-living beings, between people and the land, the earth on the whole, animals, other beings. We also use relationality to refer to a value system in research. The axiology that relationships are the most important thing in research and that research should be relationally accountable, reciprocal, and promote respectful interaction of all people involved. Then we get a large collection of terms and concepts that show some kind of ontological or epistemological suppression or marginalization. For instance, some people refer to things like ontological difference, ontological density, ontological inferiority, and other terms like that to show that some realities of some ways of being are believed to be less human or inferior to other ways of being. Where ways of being and ontologies have been erased maybe by colonial histories, and some phenomena like black or African carries less ontological weight or has less ontological density than phenomena such as white or Western. We also see this called ontological racism. Along similar lines, we use concepts like epistemic racism and the coloniality of knowledge and epistemicide to show that certain forms of knowledge are suppressed or have been suppressed and marginalized by colonialism and by its remaining trends, coloniality. There are so many different and interesting concepts you'll come across when you start studying research philosophy. It's like I said at the beginning, we can't even scratch the surface here. But let's get back to what I want to do with this tutorial, and that is to show you the links between the different trees, like the tree of our normal life and our research philosophy tree between the different levels of beliefs and how things come together. Now, from the concepts, you can already see how the different areas of research philosophy are linked. Because for many of these concepts, you can use them to say something about your ontology, about your epistemology, about your axiology, and even your methodology, depending on how you use the term. Now, in many instances, this type of thinking will line up between the areas of research philosophy, and you can have a realist ontology, an objectivist epistemology, an axiology of value-free or value-neutral research. Sometimes it's not that straightforward, and you could perhaps have a realist ontology but a constructionist epistemology. Like if you believe that an organization just is what it is, it's objectively a place in which people work, it's a separate entity that exists independent of what people think about it. But you could also believe that organizational knowledge is made between people as they work together, so your knowledge belief is constructionist. This is also the place where your personal beliefs, like your personal tree, intertwine with your research beliefs. Because you could hold a personal belief that God created the church to gather his people. And if you are doing research about the church as an organization, this belief about what the church is and what the purpose of the church is both a personal and a research ontology. Or you could have a feminist political belief that men and women matter equally, but that our way of being is structured on gendered power relations that privileges men over women. This is both a personal and a research belief, and it's also both ontological, so about reality, and axiological, about values. It can even become more specific than that, and weave together a number of things. You can have a constructionist decolonial ontology, an African eco-spiritual cosmology, a relational axiology and epistemology. As an example, if you study employee communications or internal communication, but you believe that the lived realities of Black Africans are still being marginalized, as our understandings of communication management was and is constructed by only Euro-Western versions of life. Along that same line, you can then bring in a cosmology and a spirituality by specifically acknowledging beliefs about interconnections between the living and the non-living. And from there flows an epistemology and an axiology of relationality. So relationality as a form of knowledge and relationality as the moral importance. Now, as an academic researcher, your disciplinary field also comes into play. If you study public relations, and specifically maybe the contribution of public relations to the bottom line of a company, you can almost not get away from some degree of objectivism, as your discipline or your topic or your area accepts that single reality that companies are there to make money, and the bottom line is about profits. If your philosophic beliefs are dependent on so many things, it's of course also possible to hold different epistemological, ontological, and axiological beliefs about different things, and even different things in the same study. That's the reason why we often rather talk about philosophical assumptions and not philosophical beliefs, as I've been referring to, when it comes to research projects. Because we are not always referring to something we personally believe in, but rather to things that we assume to be true for the sake of our study. So here's an example. You are studying stakeholder relationships, and the focus is on the relationship between the company and their suppliers. So suppliers are those other businesses that give goods and services, provide goods and services. You are using an instrumental version of stakeholder theory and the stakeholder management theory. And those theories imply that it's the nature of business to make money, that stakeholder relationships are instrumental to this mission to making money, and that stakeholder relationships are based on subjective human experiences. So, in terms of ontology, you have a realist or objectivist stance about the nature of organizations, but a subjective stance towards the nature of stakeholder relationships. Also, in terms of epistemology, Stakeholder relationships can only be known subjectively, but their contribution or their instrumental value to an organization can be known objectively. Can you see that these beliefs in this example also don't have much to do with your personal beliefs, but they are assumptions made about reality and assumptions made about knowledge based on your theory and your area of interest. So your ontological and epistemological assumptions include both objectivism and subjectivism in this example. Now let's bring it back to where we started. Research philosophy on the whole belongs to the area of epistemology because all research is essentially about knowledge creation, knowledge, seeking of knowledge, and so on. But as a specialist philosophy, research philosophy is often expressed by referring to the ontology, epistemology, axiology, and methodology. So we express our axiological, ontological, epistemological, and methodological beliefs or assumptions. And those have a great influence on how we approach research projects and which topics we choose and which theories we favor and which methods we use. In the next tutorial, we will move on from this basic introduction to research philosophy to looking at specific paradigmatic positions. And paradigmatic positions are almost like a template or like a combo of different ontological, epistemological, axiological, and methodological beliefs that kind of fit together to form specific frameworks or recipes for research. While it's all built on these assumptions of research philosophy, I think the next tutorial will also greatly inform you about how to go about doing research. See you next time.